Welcome, brave souls, to the fire's flickering light, where shadows dance and whispers of the unknown drift on the wind. I'm Sam Hain, your guide through the eerie tales that haunt the darkest corners of your imagination. Tonight, we gather around the flames to uncover stories that will chill your bones, make your heart race, and keep you looking over your shoulder. From ancient legends to ghastly encounters, these tales are not for the faint of heart. So, stoke the fire, lean in close, and prepare yourself for a journey into the realm of the strange and the sinister. Are you ready to be afraid? Let the storytelling begin.
The moon hung low over the Scottish Highland, casting pale light through the twisted branches of the forest. A thin mist clung to the ground, swirling between the trees like ghostly fingers. 6 teens stood at the edge of the woods, their breath clouding in the chilly October air. "This place is perfect," Callum grinned, looking at the clearing ahead where the ancient stones stood in a ring covered in moss. "Just wait until the others see the prank. They'll lose it." The plan was simple. A Halloween party deep in the woods, far from any adults. There'd be a campfire, drinks, and a few terrifying pranks. Fake blood, rigged branches to crack in the distance, and eerie whispers from a hidden speaker. It was all set to make the night unforgettable. Sean had spent the afternoon carefully hanging thin wires between the trees, ready to snap at the right moment, while Emily had filled a bucket with thick, sticky, fake blood that would be accidentally spilled on an unsuspecting guest. Callum, the mastermind, had even set up a hidden Bluetooth speaker that would play ghostly whispers and cries from the shadows. As they set up, the forest around them felt strange. The trees seemed to loom closer, their twisted branches stretching like claws. The only sound was the crunch of dry leaves underfoot and the occasional hoot of an owl. "I swear this place is cursed," Isla whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. Her eyes kept drifting to the stone circle. "My gran used to say witches were burnt here." "Don't start with that," Sean said, trying to sound brave. "There's nothing out here but us." But as the night fell and the first guests arrived, something changed. The air grew heavier and the forest seemed to close in around them. The fire they had built flickered weakly, as though it was struggling against the surrounding darkness. The mood was light at first, teens passing around drinks, laughing nervously as they waited for the scares to begin. Callum slipped away from the group to take his position in the woods, ready to spring his prank. He donned a grotesque mask with hollow, dark eyes and stained teeth, crouching low behind a cluster of bushes. At the signal, Emily triggered the speaker, sending eerie whispers drifting through the trees. The group around the fire began to look around uneasily, laughing but clearly on edge. That's when the first wire snapped, a sudden crack from deep within the forest. Several heads turned, wide-eyed, as Isla let out a small yelp. Sean grinned in satisfaction, knowing the fear was starting to take hold. Just as planned, Callum leapt from the shadows with a guttural scream, his mask illuminated in the dim light of the fire. Several of the teens jumped back, shrieking in terror, some clutching each other as their laughter turned to nervous giggles. The prank had worked. Callum pulled off his mask, expecting to join in the laughter, until he froze. It was supposed to be a joke, but as Callum stood there, mask in hand, he didn't laugh. Instead, his face drained of colour, eyes wide in genuine fear. "There's something out there," he stammered, backing away from the trees, Someone's watching us. The group fell silent. Callum wasn't the type to scare easily, and the look on his face told them this wasn't part of the act. Before anyone could speak, a deep, throaty growl rumbled from the darkness beyond the clearing. It didn't seem to sound like any animal they knew, and the sound sent a cold shiver down everyone's spine. The fire suddenly felt too small, its light too weak against the growing darkness. "It's probably just a wild animal," Emily said, though her voice trembled. She glanced nervously toward the trees, where Callum had seen the figure. Sean grabbed a stick from the fire, holding it like a torch. "We should check it out," he said, more to prove his own bravery than anything else. With Callum and Emily reluctantly following, the three ventured into the woods, leaving Isla and the others by the fire. The further they walked, the quieter the forest became. No rustling leaves, no distant hooting of owls, just heavy, oppressive silence. It was as if the whole forest was waiting for something. They stepped carefully, the light of Sean's torch flickering in the thickening mist. Every now and then, a faint whisper seemed to rise from the ground itself, barely audible, but enough to raise goosebumps. Then, beneath the trees, they saw it. A figure stood just beyond the reach of the torchlight, pale and thin, barely more than a shadow. At first it didn't move, its eyes glowing faintly like dim coals. Watched them with unnatural stillness. Its mouth stretched into a wide, disturbing grin, showing rows of sharp, yellow teeth. It looked human, almost. But there was something terribly wrong with it, something that made Callum's skin crawl. The figure stepped forward, moving with a jerky, unnatural speed, as if its joints bent the wrong way. It came closer, and the light of Sean's torch flickered violently, as if it was struggling to stay alive in the presence of this thing. "Run," Callum whispered. His voice was barely audible over the sound of his pounding heart. His feet felt frozen to the ground. Before they could react, the figure lunged, its long bony fingers reaching out with a terrifying speed. Callum and Emily screamed, stumbling backward, as Sean swung the torch wildly in front of them, trying to ward off the creature. But it didn't flinch. Its twisted grin grew wider, revealing teeth too long for a human mouth. Back at the fire, Isla heard the distant screams. She stood up, heart hammering in her chest, as the others huddled together in fear. Callum, Sean, and Emily burst out of the trees, their faces pale, breathless. "There's something out there," Callum yelled. "We've got to go, now." But as they turned to run, the fire flickered and died, leaving them in complete darkness. The temperature dropped sharply, the air turning ice cold. From the shadows, a voice, a low, whispering voice, rose like a cold wind. "You trespassed on sacred ground," it hissed, though the sound came from all directions at once. "Now you belong to the forest." Panic took over as they scrambled to find the path, but the trees had shifted, their branches intertwined, blocking every escape. From the darkness more figures appeared, pale, silent and staring with hungry eyes. One by one, the teens were dragged into the shadows, their terrified screams swallowed by the ancient woods. The last thing Isla saw before the darkness consumed her was the stone circle glowing faintly, as though it was feeding on their fear. The next morning the police would find nothing but an abandoned campsite, the remains of a fire, and 6 sets of footprints leading into the forest. No one ever saw the group again, but every Halloween Locals claim to hear the faint echoes of their screams carried on the wind, and some say that if you listen closely, you can still hear them begging for help, trapped forever in the cursed woods of Scotland. That's the end of our tale, but remember, some stories aren't just stories. If you ever find yourself in the Scottish woods on Halloween, be careful where you wander. The forest doesn't always let people leave. You might just hear those trapped voices on the wind. Thanks for sticking around to the very end of this spooky tale. If you enjoyed the story, make sure you hit that like button. It helps summon more campfire chills to your feed. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next terrifying tale.